Dominic Steele here, and this is The Pastor's Heart. Look, coming up over the next few weeks, we're going to be talking to Kanishka Rafael about leadership. Richard Chin is going to be joining us from the Living Church in Brisbane. Steve Cree is going to be here to talk about team preaching and how they do that. And then we're going to have the two significant leaders from the GAFCON movement, the new chairman of GAFCON, Archbishop Foley Beach from the United States, from the Anglican Church of North America, and Archbishop Ben Quashie, the new General Secretary of GAFCON. They're going to be joining us here as well. Now, I wonder if you could help us out. You could subscribe to The Pastor's Heart. You can do that on the Apple device at bit.ly/thepastor'sapple, or you could subscribe on Android, bit.ly/thepastor'sandroid. If you're on Spotify, just type into your browser bit.ly/thepastor'sSpotify, or on YouTube, bit.ly/thepastor'sYouTube. It'd be great if you're on the Apple device, if you could let us know a comment, or you could like us, a rating in the iTunes store. That'd be terrific. And we'd appreciate it if you could get behind us financially as well. The URL to do that is bit.ly/thepastor'spatreon. And if you do that, there's an opportunity for a gift from us. Of the Introducing God pack, the course material, the training DVD, plus the course driver's manual and participant's handbook for anybody who jumps in at a $10 a month supporter. We're looking forward to having you as part of that. Now, this week on The Pastor's Heart, we turn to the Nexus Conference of last week and the afternoon panel discussion about evangelism. Those on the panel: Phil Colgan, the Senior Minister of St George North, Alison Napier, and Alison's on the team at Campus Bible Study, the University of New South Wales. I was on the panel, and the chairman, Carl Matthei, who is the senior pastor of the Campus Bible Study, or University of New South Wales Unichurch ministry.
Dominic, may we start with you? 20 years ago, you were thinking about evangelism, and you decided to design your own evangelistic course. Can you tell us the thinking behind that?
Sure. I was working for the Department of Evangelism, so I was preaching 100 times a year itinerantly, and it just felt like it was such a long journey from the evangelistic dinner at Padstow RSL to Sunday morning, and you just couldn't see people making that. And so I went along to the Billy Graham conference in Amsterdam. They invited me to that, and at that conference, what was said from the main platform just seemed ridiculous in terms of they were just trying to raise up more Billy Grahams, whereas in some of the elective seminars, they were starting to talk about these relational courses, and I came back thinking, that's what we've got to do. We've got to, and so I was just about becoming the minister at Village, what's now called Village Church, and I worked out I needed to bet the ministry on Jesus over food, and so that if we could get people to come along to one night, and on the first night, the goal wasn't to ask them to marry me, the goal was that they would just come back for a second date, and then a third date, and a fourth date. And so just a little bit of information that you could just make the next step. And in the kindness of God, I worked out that was the sociology we wanted to do, but I wanted to do the theology of the two ways to live. So all I did really was set two ways to live to music, or set two ways to live to relationship, and that became Introducing God.
Beautiful. That was almost 20 years ago now. What's changed and what's stayed the same?
Well, I would say when we first wrote Introducing God, it was very much a child of the Don Carson book, The Gagging of God. And Carson came out with this amazing book which talked about how people, all our evangelism up until then, had been focused on, and all the training I had on evangelism had been thinking about the modernist. And Carson said, no, there's this new group of people, and I was completely foreign to them, but actually I could see them everywhere, but I couldn't work out how to talk to them, these postmoderns, and who had rejected the idea of truth. But now we've gone to the post-postmodern, and what is the post-postmodern? Well, it's really hard to define, it's so super slippery, but I think it's the pragmatist, that I want to do what works for me, and so the question isn't initially, is it true? The question initially is, will it make my life work better?
you don't just do evangelism by yourself.
No.
You are seeking to train the whole church family in evangelism. What kind of training do you use?
Our strategy is pretty simple. We're running Introducing God 4 times a year, where we're scooping people in, and we're trying to get as many people into that course. We run it for 7 weeks, and then we switch that over into people into the Knowing Jesus group. We were running 6 or 7 courses a year, and we just found that we for quite a few years we didn't start any new Bible study groups. What we did was we started evangelistic groups
and flip them over.
And then they gradually evolved at the end of it into being a Bible study group. And about the end of the Introducing God course, about half the people were Christian. We'd add a few more Christians in, and then the others who hadn't yet become Christian would trickle into the kingdom over the next 2 years. And I think that's pretty normal to see about, of the people who finish the course, half of them have come to Christ, and then the others come to Christ over the next 2 years.
But it's an investment in time, isn't it?
Extremely relationally expensive.
Yeah.
And so what we've gone for is bigger courses 4 times a year, and then we have to, the big difficulty though is you get to the end of the course and you're making a relational change in gear, and you just don't want to lose people, but we can't work out how to do it more cost efficiently than that. And so Jessica is training a set of leaders who will do Introducing God 4 times in the year, and then a follow-up course that's just running through Mark's Gospel, doing Knowing Jesus. Yeah.
When I've talked to you in the past, you've spoken about different kinds of evangelists and different kinds of people who need an evangelist.
Yeah. So people talk about that stupid idea of, are we all evangelists? I want to say no. We all have to have the heart of Jesus. So in Luke's Gospel, the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. The whole movement of Luke's Gospel is about seeking and saving. The whole movement of the Bible since the fall is God moving to bring lost people back into relationship. So if you have the heart of God, you will be about seeking and saving lost people. Now, of course, we're all wired differently. We've all got different gifts. There are 3 sorts of evangelists. There are rock star evangelists, there are professional evangelists, and there are everyday evangelists. Now, listening to C.S. Tang, it's really clear that some moments he gets up on the platform and he's a rock star evangelist. He really clearly gives that punchy 20-minute talk. There's that guy that the woman takes him round to that restaurant owner, and he's a professional evangelist. That restaurant owner knows he's in for a Christian conversation when C.S. walks in the door. But then when he's on the plane, he's an everyday evangelist. And I've just got to remember that in those 3 different relationships, I am playing 3 different roles. There are 4 sorts of evangelees. There's the backpacker. Now, the backpacker in C.S.'s world is the person on the plane. They're in his life for an hour, 3 hours, 19 hours for a flight. I mean, somebody comes to our church. It's Sunday night. You get into a conversation with them. They're sitting next to you. And you work out they're flying to New Zealand on Tuesday. Well, you don't invite them to Introducing God. That's crazy. You say, do you know what it is we believe here? And let me take you through a little outline. I didn't write this, but I can just show you how I'd explain what the Christian...
So you'd use the 2 ways to live tract at that point?
Yeah. I was taught... I learnt 2 ways to live in 1990. I was determined never to share it with anyone. Because they were advertising it to go and do that terrible thing of talking to strangers, and I just couldn't possibly conceive doing that. But I thought it might be helpful to learn some Bible verses off by heart. So I learnt the 2 ways to live thing. And then about a month later, I was working at WSFM and I was driving a work experience kid home, and we stopped at Parramatta McDonald's and because I knew what to say, I explained the gospel to him. And so on a napkin in McDonald's, for the first time, I drew the 2 ways to live outline, and I've pretty much drawn it for someone once a week for, 28 years or something like that. Yeah.
It's a great thing to have at the back of the toolkit, isn't it? Ready to bring out.
Yeah, and so I think to be able to, and every non-Christian conversation I'm in, I'm analysing where are we in that outline. Now, but the 4 sorts of evangelists.
Yes,
there's the backpacker.
I'm going to have to keep you moving.
Let me just give you those 3 and then I'll stop.
Yep.
There's the backpacker, there's the speech pathologist. I had problems with my voice. I had to go and speak to a woman for 6 meetings. I've got to go and talk to her. She's in my life for 3 months. I've got to go slower than
the guy next to you on the plane.
Next to on the plane, but faster than my workmate who's in my life for 3 years.
Yeah.
And then the next person is my brother. Now, what we find on the relational course, if people work out that it's safe, the vast majority of the guests are brothers and workmates. Because if it's safe and I'm confident about the environment, then I'm going to go out on the limb to get the person there who I really care about.
Thank you, and I wish we had more time, but I am going to move would either of you like to comment on anything Dominic's spoken, or I'm happy to move straight to Alison. Alison, you've worked in 3 interesting contexts: the cathedral, the city workers, and now international students. Training in ministry, is it necessary? In training in evangelism?
Definitely, totally essential. In all those different contexts, and they are quite different contexts, but I think it's true, there aren't really that many rock star evangelists around, that most of us actually need some training in order to be able to do that. I think training in what to say and also how to say it. And I've lost count of the number of times I've done the 2 Ways to Live training course now, but I have seen people really grow in confidence through knowing what to say. Interestingly enough too, and Andrew alluded to this earlier, there's many people who become Christians through doing training courses, and I was actually one of them, so I'm very keen on evangelism training courses for that reason as well.
Beautiful.
Tell us more.
Well, yes, definitely. It was the Evangelism Explosion course, actually, so I was going along to my local uniting church, and I had all these questions, which were basically a variation on a theme, what does it mean to be a Christian? But I was getting very complicated answers to those questions. But the minister there, bless him, a faithful Methodist minister, decided to do Evangelism Explosion with people in the congregation. I think about 4 of us turned up to do it. I was in my final year of high school or maybe my first year of uni. And those 2 diagnostic questions at the beginning, if you died tonight, would you go to heaven? And when you died and you were standing there before God and he said, why should I let you in? What would you say? They were basically the questions I'd had for a few years, and the 45-minute gospel outline definitely answered it thoroughly for me. And I became a Christian that night.
Beautiful. And don't tell anyone, but the first course we put students through at Campus Bible Study is the 2 Ways to Live training course, really because we want to make sure they know the Lord first and foremost, and they're going to hear the gospel. So don't tell anyone, but that's what we're doing.
It does need freshening up, that training course, though.
Yeah, we may have freshened it up a little bit on our own, without telling anyone. I think that's worth doing.
I think we have
Sorry,
too,
Tony. Sorry, Ian.